Hello. Today, I want to take you on a little journey regarding a certain curious phenomenon in this world of ours, which is so rich and plentiful in mysteries. I want to talk of angels and see if we can find some insights regarding the nature of these curious and complicated beings or figments. It should be a simple and fun adventure, and I think you'll enjoy it. To begin with, most likely it is no trouble at all for you to conjure up a mental image of what an angel might mean to you, whether it is something serious, or something silly, or something trite. You might, for example, envision a soft image of a winged cherub on a rosy cloud, or else strange rolling contraptions of wheels within wheels, all filled with eyes which are stuck wide open. To help us on our journey today, I want to enlist the help of some forebears of ours who have jotted down thoughts regarding these powers down in the corridors of time through the remarkable craft of writing. And perhaps later on we will find a way to hark these creatures and even marshal them in some manner to our aid. So, we shall need a library of some kind. Now, relax with me, close your eyes if you like, and imagine a place where you can be peacefully surrounded by books sourced through the ages. Imagine peace and plentiful daylight flowing in amongst old tomes. A good environment for you to find concentration in. Perhaps you are in the private library of an old English country house, surrounded by greenery with bookshelves reaching from the floor to the ceiling, stacked with leather-bound volumes. Or you might be in a creaky and atmospheric New Hampshire mansion where the darkly wallpapered walls have seen many a story unfold. Or you may be settled instead on a wonderfully soft, large cushion in an ancient stone house tucked away on a side street in bustling Istanbul, a cup of fragrant tea nearby, surrounded by towers of almost forgotten books. Or perhaps you're here with me in Bohemia, in Prague, in the new castle only 1,000 years old, away from the streams of tourists, having come through a secret passage to this place, the private prayer chapel of the Holy Roman Emperor. You can see the daylight filtering in from windows high up, just under the tall vaulted ceiling, and you can take a deep breath as you admire the walls richly decorated with frescoes and altarpieces, catching a glimpse of a relic or two. Perhaps you can even spot some of the 7 mysterious mistakes embedded here by the Knights Templar who built the place back in the day. Breathing it all in, you can enjoy the peace of this place. And you can come with me, if you like, following me, following my voice, down these smooth stone steps to the reading chamber underneath this chapel. Once we've applied the necessary anointments and ablutions, so that we may properly comprehend the words we may encounter on those sleepy and rarely opened pages we are about to go visit. Now, wherever you are, take a moment to breathe in the scent of these books and relax just a little bit deeper. It's so easy to do. Now we're settled and comfortable, so very relaxed. So let's open the first book that comes to hand, though it is in truth a scroll, and see what we find angels called therein, in the mists of time. Malak Elohim, which translates to messengers of God. Messengers. Okay, that seems straightforward. Those who carry news and guidance. But what of this God? Are we to get stuck on this right away? Another word which will no doubt come with much connotation and association. A very pregnant word, this God, the omnipotent, infinite being, it is said. Let's scour around some more. As another weighty book near you states, in some sense God is a sewer, an empty pit to be filled with something flowing into it. Contradictions, paradoxes, the results of thought thinking itself, and coming perhaps to a greater realization of the nature of this being. And as you relax here contemplating this and keep on reading, you may come to realize, having fortuitously picked up yet another thick book, that to even call God a being is to already be mired in confusion. For if God is to be truly infinite and unlimited, and such does seem to be the requirement for something to be called by that name, then this God cannot, in fact, be a being, any being at all, for by being a being, it would be of necessity limited by being in relation to other beings. So, by God not being you, for example, or not being me, we would render this conception of God to not be unlimited, not infinite. So to think of God in the first instance as a being is to make God finite. But what is it to be finite? Reading further, here in the comfortable company of curious books, you may realize that it is to be partially real. In other words, in a certain light, finite, bounded things such as you and me fail to be as real as we could be, because what you and I are depends to a great degree on our relations to other finite things. Now, if there were instead something that depended only on itself to make it what it is, then that something would be more fully real in the same sense than we are. And so we understand, breathing deep once more, why it is important for anything that could properly be named God to be infinite, as only this would make God more herself, and more fully real as herself than anything else. And so we're traveling far now in these labyrinths, but I want you to know you can always tune into my voice and find your way again. And now we can ask, do we have a sense of what it might be to be more fully real, as this book says? Chances are, I think, that if you look inside yourself with your eyes closed and think of a time when you have achieved a greater level of self-determination, we may make some progress. Think of a time when you've taken a step back from the desires holding you in a given moment. When you've asked yourself, what would make the most sense? What would be the best overall at that time, in that place? In that manner, you would have made yourself less dependent on whatever caused you to feel the desire that was holding you at that moment. So we may say, if one is able to conceive of being self-determining in this way, then they are more itself, more real as its own self, than something that is simply a product of its circumstances. This is something you can do at any time, as you breathe deep, relax, hear my voice, and focus on stepping back from whatever might be holding you or preoccupying you at a given time. You know that you always have this capacity as a willing being. But we must be nearing a grasp of what it might mean to be a messenger of God. Let's just dwell with this book some more, though, just to get a bit further. Having digested all that we've seen so far, we may reflect that God is not the world, nor is God nature, nor is God us. Instead, it might dawn on you now that what might be properly termed God is the name for the fullest reality, arising out of ourselves, out of the world and nature, That is to say, rising out of beings of merely limited reality. And we may, moreover, spot at the edge of one of these pages before us a more poetic view onto what it is to be fully self-determining, to be intimately involved in each and every living thing across the universe, namely, to be free love and boundless blessedness. Now, this abstract journey we have walked on these pages and pieces of parchment may be seen to be enacted more vividly in our human life. For example, as another book states, in a religious tradition wherein God, first conceived of as some exceedingly powerful, nearly or completely transcendental being, steps volitionally into human flesh, only to be tortured and killed by humankind. This God-human dies a wretched death, and humankind is left to witness the emptiness and impossibility of a God, which would be a finite being, digesting this notion at some more or less intuitive level. Then, through this bewilderment and communal witnessing, it is written, a notion of resurrection is invoked. A resurrection in spirit, sometimes called holy, which may be properly understood not as some strange ectoplasm, but as the shared existence and reality of the congregants, or more broadly, the shared intersubjectivity of persons at large. Grounded thereby in nothing transcendent, we may find this, at least, in the structures of will, so-called, that persist even if an individual member of the structure is hurled out, leaves, or perishes. That is to say, in things such as our shared myths, narratives, institutions, and practices. But let's take a moment, since we've imagined a brutal scene such as this one, and let's remember to breathe deep and keep our mind relaxed and open. We're in no rush. Yet, having now traveled this far, we might come to think that we have a handle on what a messenger of God might be in a general sense. So a guide, a bearer of information, a signpost, a drive, an opportunity, relating to the notion of a higher, more full reality of self-actualization, itself grounded in the activity of our world, our minds, and the intricate intersubjective structures that cohere and shift between us, in the labyrinths of language, in the promises we make to one another, in the guilds and institutions we enact and develop, and in the actions we perform. Potentially, in the service of participating in or bringing into being a more full reality. Let's try and pry, then, into the nature of these messengers. Here we find a bright, yellow, slender book, a collection of elegies of some sort, which might help us a little, though in a less familiar tongue. Wer, wenn ich schrie, hörte mich denn aus der Engelordnungen, und gesetzt selbst, es nähme einer mich plötzlich ans Herz. Ich verginge von seinem stärkeren Dasein. Denn das Schöne ist nichts als des schrecklichen Anfang, den wir noch gerade ertragen. Und wir bewundern es so, weil es gelassen verschmäht, uns zu zerstören. Ein jeder Engel ist schrecklich. Which turns in English to, who, if I cried out, would hear me among the angels' hierarchies, and even if one of them suddenly pressed me against his heart, I would perish in the embrace of his stronger existence. For beauty is nothing but the beginning of terror, which we are barely able to endure, and are awed because it serenely disdains to annihilate us. Each single angel is terrifying. So we learn something about the perhaps alien nature of angels, their possible indifference towards us, in this strand of thought at least, and certainly their unfathomable strength in comparison to our everyday self. Alien, perhaps, to begin with, but with the hope of us climbing closer if we are well prepared and steadfast of purpose. And pursuing these elegies would be a very fine evening spent indeed, as they unfold on a stormy cliffside set beside a castle somewhere. We also pick up on the thought of there being angelic orders, hierarchies of these messengers. And, since we are still on our light and frolicking adventure, we can jump over to yet another work to investigate these hierarchies somewhat. Looking around, we should be able to spot this very ornate book, speaking of a faith labeled Orthodox, talking of the synaxis of the Archangel Michael and the other bodiless powers. And in it, you may read much that has been posited about such hierarchies, or angelic spheres, split into the highest, middle, and lowest orders. Classifications which range from principalities to virtues to seraphim to archangels. Michael, who is explicitly referred to in the title of this book, born perhaps in Babylon, is therein conceived as the great captain of these messengers. So, can something to be said of Michael's nature and that of the archangel's peers? Now, it appears that veritable infinities have been written on the existence and nature of even thousands of such archangels and their kin, and we may not well be able to discern the helpful from the perplexing. In this book, however, we come across 7 such beings: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, Salathiel, Jagudiel, and Barachiel. Of these 7, the first 4 seem the most revered, and are in fact sometimes depicted surrounding the great throne of God. Reading a bit further on these gilded pages with their fearsome illustrations, in terms of the specifics of these angels, we may learn the following. There is Michael, who bears a sword, and who is the hand of God, and who is after justice. Then there is Gabriel, who carries the strength of God, who is after humility. And then Raphael, who is the healing of God, and who is after love and loving communication. And as the 4th one, Uriel, who is the wisdom and fire of God, who is after truth. And so we have made friends, a little, with these angels as they sit on the pages of this ornate book in this reading chamber of our minds. Though in other works speaking of an earlier time, we may hear of at least one further member of this group, one who was after freedom. But in any case, we have travelled for quite a while already in this manner of ours, remembering to breathe deep and stay relaxed. You may choose to absorb some of these things that have been said, of the non-being being of God, and of these divine messengers by explorers and wanderers of past generations, though whether these explorers were lost in the wilderness, I cannot for certain say. If nonetheless we conceive of these angels as subtle structurations of wills that have existed within us, or that are coming into being within and between us, we may benefit from trying to bring these dimensions of ourselves to more acute focus in our minds. For what would it mean to dwell upon an aspect of yourself that champions justice, or humility, or love, or truth? And could there be value in crystallizing these abstractions within the rich landscape of your mind? It will be easy to at least try it out. Luckily, in between this ornate book, there's a slip of paper that contains a tiny spell that might help with exactly that. or so I have been told. It goes like this. Child, you must protect yourself. You can protect yourself with fire. Gabriel before me, Raphael behind me, Michael to my right, Uriel on my left side. And once more, the invocation reads, Gabriel before me, Raphael behind me, Michael to my right, Uriel on my left side. And this spell is to create a ring of protective fire, iridescent fire that cannot harm you, but which will protect you when summoned, and give you more capacity to reach towards a more full reality as it shimmers all around you, and as your worries recede into the background or fall away entirely. Having learned now this power, the capacity to marshal the fire of truth, healing, humility, and justice in our aid as we navigate the fluctuations of that spectrum of reality and self-determination, which is our lot in life, is perhaps like a small gem unearthed after toiling at a hard mineral seam down in the bowels of the world. If you so choose, you may grab hold of it and store it in a pouch or somewhere else, where it may be retrieved whenever you see fit. And with this gem now in your palm, perhaps this is enough adventure time with these dusty and silent friends of ours for now. Feel free then to lift your eyes from these dusty pages and enjoy the welcoming daylight around you again. Delighted to feel so calm and relaxed, ready to carry on with your day, nourished perhaps, and comforted, I trust, in the knowledge that my voice will go with you wherever you may carry it.